G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are talking the rest of the premium defenders, the ones that we think are overvalued that you should not be picking for your AFL Fantasy squad. Let's go!
Just done it from nowhere. Hoisted the goal from inside the centre. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty. Petty. Petrarca. Oh, wow. How good is that? The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Mitch Casey and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy, and joined once again talking defenders. Luke, how are you, man?
Mate, I'm good. It's good to be back. Luke Rojo17 on Twitter for anyone who's looking for me. And
keeping track. What are we?
Mate, exciting news. I want to build up to this a little bit. So the guys on watching on YouTube, you guys will be able to see this piece of paper in front. It says 1 out of 3. Now, it's not because we're learning fractions today, Mitch. It's because I officially have 1 out of the 3 traders following me on Twitter. So thank you so much to the Warn Dog.
We got him on.
Yeah, we threw the bait out. We begged and pleaded last episode. So the Warn Dog, thank you so much, man. Very, very kind of you to throw us a follow. So 1 out of 3. I'm going for all 3. I reckon I'll either get all 3 or I'll get a restraining order taken out against me. But we'll see. Hey, we'll see.
Well, yeah,
so
we got to send the word out to the other 3 boys. Who's going to be next on? It's a very prestigious. Obviously, Warnie's come in first place. Who's going to come in second? Let's see. Calvin, Roy. Over to you guys now, boys.
Very, very kind of the Warn Dog. So yeah. Exciting news.
And what's the Twitter followers up to now? Where are we at?
I think we cracked the 50. So
okay.
It's,
okay, we're getting up there.
We're slowly getting there. So we'll.
All right. Well, now that the game is officially open,
mate,
there's going to be lots of content coming out through Twitter. Lots of little nuggets. I think we're going to be dropping. So let us know. Obviously, the game dropped last night on the day that we're recording. I think we've both already had a bit of a play around with our teams, and
we couldn't resist. Hey, it was we were in the middle of a Game of Thrones episode last night, and that got paused to jump on fantasy.
Yeah, so we saw the tweet, and
very exciting.
Yeah, had to jump on and have a fiddle around. We will be obviously tweeting out a lot of information, so make sure you guys are following us over on Twitter. That's where our first thoughts are going to be out there. When news drops, our initial breakdowns will be over on Twitter, and then we'll go into a bit more depth on these podcasts. But let's get stuck into it. We've got a few players to go through, some defenders that we think are overvalued. We went through our undervalued defenders in the most recent podcast. So if you haven't already, go and check that out. If you're on YouTube, there might be a little link up here. If you're on the podcast, just go to the one previous to this one. But let's start off straight away at the very top. I'll start us off here with Sam Doherty. What a story, first of all, last year. Didn't think that he was going to be playing round 1. Had an interrupted preseason. Comes out, averages over 110 fantasy points. He's priced at $977,000, so nearly a $1 million man in defense. I still think, though, however, he's overvalued, or at least there's no real value to selecting Sam Doherty. As much of a gun as he is, and as a player, I really respect and love the way he goes about it. I picked him up around the buys and was a great trade-in for me. I think when I grabbed him, he came out first game 130, but I just don't think that you're going about it the right way if you're selecting a defender at 110 price tag. I think it's just a bit much to spend on a defender.
Yeah, I agree in this case, Mitch. It's probably the same sort of case for these top 3 defenders we're going to talk about. But do you want Sam Doherty in your team by the end of the year?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course you do. So if you're listening to the pod, don't confuse what we're saying here. Of course we all want Sam Doherty in our team by the end of the year, but we're just saying that would you pick him straight off the bat, valued at 110? I think he's 970 odd thousand, maybe a little bit
977.
more. 977. So I'm not picking him right off the bat because I'm banking on the fact that we might even get him at a reduced price if he sort of starts the year a little bit slowly, but we'll see how that plays out.
And that's the thing. When you're priced at that sort of level, it doesn't take much for your price to drop a little bit. Like, you could come out averaging 105 and you're still going to drop a fair bit. You can still be the number 1 defender, but still drop in price. And the other thing is, I think I was talking to you a bit about this off air last night, is it's the opportunity cost as well. So just because if you're picking a player like Sam Doherty, those players with a really heavy price tag, Sure, he might come out and be the number one ranked defender. I still have him ranked there, but you might be missing out on the value of selecting someone else that might be of a good selection. If you have to pay up here, you're going to have to skimp somewhere else on your team. And the more money that you have invested into your starting squad at value, the better off your team is going to be. So money is points early on, and you want your points to be working for you.
Spot on. And if we reference the previous pod, we mentioned Angus Brayshaw as a player that has some value there. So he's a full $100,000 less than Doherty.
Yeah.
So if you can get Brayshaw in and he averages something similar to Doherty at the start of the season, not only do you have the points, but you've got 100K.
You've got 100K.
So
you've got 100K. You can whack that on someone else's head, and
Exactly.
hopefully that'll get you more points down the line. So yes, that's where the difference is. I think a few people might sort of point out the fact that he has averaged 117 in a season in previous years. In 2017, a little while ago now, coming down 5 or 6 years. So. And I also think that the Carlton Blues were a little bit of a different team back then. They were a team sort of very much down at the bottom of the ladder. Look, he has the capability, and if he comes out and does average 115, I wouldn't be completely shocked. I just don't think I could confidently predict that, nor would I feel comfortable paying up for that in the off chance that he does that. I still have him. We're going to go through our top six defenders at the end of this podcast, but I still have him at number 1, spoiler alert, but I just think that there's maybe a couple of points downside for him, and I think there's more value elsewhere.
I mean, and don't get it twisted, like these guys that we're going to talk about, these guys are genuine guns, and there's every chance that they go above what they averaged last year, but it's just the confidence that we have in that to start the season, probably not as much.
So let's lead on to the second overvalued player. We've got Jack Sinclair on this list.
Yeah, so I'm keen to talk about Jack Sinclair because he does fall into the boat with Doherty a little bit as just being overvalued. I don't know whether he's going to go higher than he did last year, but there's actually a couple of other things at play with Jack Sinclair as well. Obviously, we know that at St Kilda we've got a new coach. Ross the Boss is coming in. So
new system.
New system, and that's something to look at as well. I think like as fantasy coaches, we're always a little bit wary when there's changes because it could be positive, but it also could reduce a player's fantasy impact as well. So with Sinclair there, yes, again, there's every chance that he's in the top 6 defenders come the end of the year, but it's just a wait and watch on him as well. We need to see what the preseason looks like for St Kilda, and then we just don't have full confidence that his average or his price, at 103. So we just don't have full confidence starting the season that he's going to present value.
Yeah. The other thing was Sinclair was a huge surprise package last year. Like he was one of those players that didn't really have a huge change in role, just got a whole lot better, and he got a whole lot better at basically age 27. It wasn't like a 3rd or 4th year breakout or anything by any stretch. He just had an amazing season. His season high before last season was 79 points. And then all of a sudden comes out and drops 103 on us for the whole season. Was really good. Played a little bit in the middle, but it wasn't in the centre bounce where he was getting his big scores. It was off half-back, and he's played there before. So in terms of my confidence for him, repeating that or improving upon that, it's fairly low. I think there is a bit of downside to the fact that a new coach, new system, that maybe he goes back to what he's done in the past, and it's around that sort of 80s sort of mark. I think obviously he's a really good player, but compared to some of the other guys, I think there's a fairly significant risk with Sinclair, and I think that there's a bit of downside as opposed to what he did last year.
Yeah, we're not touching him off the bat at that price, are we?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's a fairly hot take. I think he won't be very highly owned because of that reason. And I think whilst I still have him inside the top 6, he's definitely a different spot than what he finished last year.
Yep.
Let's go with another one of those big 3 guys, Jordan, Dawson again. So these were the 3: Doherty, Sinclair, Dawson. They all averaged over 100 last year. Dawson 101 in his price tag. His price is where have I got him here? 893,000. It's just a tick under that 900k mark. Again, he's someone that we had on the radar last season, moving clubs, going over to Adelaide from Sydney. He played a little bit on the wing, also played a little bit off halfback, still got a lot of those kick-ins. He's obviously one of their best kicks in the team.
Yeah, I have full confidence that that Dawson will produce a similar year to last year. I don't think there's a risk of him falling off a cliff or anything. But as with the first two guys, it's just he performed so well last year that it just means that he's not fantasy value for us.
There's no real change in his role.
Yeah.
There's the team's not dramatically different or anything like that. I think that you could go out on a limb and say that, yep, he's going to improve again. He is still young-ish. He's turning 26 this year. So in the middle of his prime. But statistically, there's no real evidence to say that he's going to come out and average 110 this year instead of 101.
And with these three top guys, we're not saying that you couldn't pick these guys in your team and still do well.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
You could pick these guys. You could still do well. So there's take our advice, of course, but run it through your own lens as well. If you wanted to pick these guys, there's still an opportunity to do well, but we're just saying they don't present as much value as some of the other players that you could pick. Yeah,
exactly. And we refer back to rule number 1 there, Luke. We want to be, I know we've been hot on the over 30s rule, but rule number 1, every player should have value and you need to be confident in that value. Yeah. And I don't think that I could confidently go ahead and just make a bold prediction that these guys here are going to be 10 points, 5 points better than they were last season because they had really good years, and there's always room for them to slide back. Let's move on to the next couple of guys. So those are the big three. I think there's a couple of guys here which are really obvious. We'll run through them maybe a bit quicker.
Couple of Weagles. Alex Witherden, priced at 95, 844,000. Shannon Hearn, priced at just a tick over under 94. So, Mitch, you're telling me you're not picking Shannon Hearn in your team?
Well, he does cross one of those rules, mate. He's old as shit, man.
He may need a mobility scooter on the field soon, I reckon.
This has got to be his last year, right?
He'd be going close. His hairline is almost as bad as mine. So at 35,
I've noticed you've worn a hat each podcast here.
Yeah, it's a very deliberate move, mate. It's a deliberate move. We can't all be as good looking as you, mate. So 35 for Shannon Hearn. Although he's a jet, one of the best users in the AFL. Fantasy-wise, not for us.
Yeah, so Shannon Hearn, he just, I expect him to regress a little bit. He put up a great season last year, and he's definitely their designated
especially the last 7 games.
I think he came home averaging
like 105 to 110.
Something like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's dominating their kick-ins, basically takes nearly 90% of those. He's definitely the general back there. And Alex Witherden, we've always been waiting for Shannon Hearn to retire so Witherden can get his opportunity. But
mate, if he took the kick-outs, he'd average 110.
Yeah, he's a bit of, he's got that little fantasy sort of piggish behaviour about him. He's always looking for those sort of +6s, bit of a seagull, but his spot in the team is not secure. The Eagles don't really seem to want to give him that opportunity, and just not someone I can trust basically moving forward. And like we said before, there's no real change in the team. Maybe Shannon Hearn brings the kick-in responsibility a little bit less, and someone like a Witherden can pick it up. But there's also a few younger defenders in there that I think
there's just too many. There's too many ifs, isn't there?
Yeah.
With particularly Witherden, and Hearn's just super old. So
so I think they're pretty obvious overvalued guys.
Now,
go on.
Next bloke on the list, I was just going to say, if you're happy for us to move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
I'm interested to get your thoughts here because this guy, I think, will be a popular choice with some people. I think he's got a little bit of a fantasy history, and I think people will see that name and think, hey, I might be able to get on this guy. He's 31, so I know you're not getting him, but talk to us about Mitch Duncan.
Yes, Mitch Duncan. So I think I when we were doing these shows up, just by name value alone, when we first started doing those run sheets, I initially had Mitch Duncan in our value category. And
what made you change?
Well, just looking at the stats last year, and sort of, okay, well, what is he actually doing in the role that he's going to be playing this year?
Yep.
And I think my mind instantly went to, Mitch Duncan, he's averaged 112 in the past. He's averaged 105. He's someone who's got a really high fantasy pedigree. But playing in that defensive role with the Geelong's adjustment to their game style, they're no longer chipping it around like they were in a few seasons ago. I just don't see the upside for a Mitch Duncan at age 31 to improve on last year. Tom Stewart is more their general.
Yeah.
They also still have another few other guys down back there that can sort of possess the footy. I think that when he was that wing in the centre, doing whatever he wants, he was maybe a bit better of a ceiling. But I think in this role off half-back in a Geelong team that doesn't kick the ball around as much anymore, I just think he is what he is, and I don't know if I see the statistical reason for him to improve. Like, he played 19 games last year. It's a fair sample size, and it was all in the same role pretty much. He had a good finals. He put up some good stats in the finals, grand final. Had the 27 disposals and 13 marks, but we know how much of a blowout that game was.
Yeah, there's he's always going to go big at some stage, isn't he? So
he's going to have some big games.
There's
no
always
doubt.
going to be a game where you go, damn, don't have Mitch Duncan. But I think there's 16k difference between Stewart and Duncan, and I'm taking Stewart.
I'm taking Stewart every day as well. Yeah. In that matchup.
Yeah. Now the next fella here, Dan Houston, we have a problem. Do you reckon we have a problem, or what are your thoughts initially? And I've got some takes as well.
I've seen some takes out there in the Twitter AFL fantasy community that Houston might be a bit unders. I just don't know if I can confidently go ahead and say that and lock him into my fantasy squad. Like, he's a very up and down kind of player, and when I am not able to tell why someone went off and had a huge score and why they went to crap, there's not an obvious change in role or anything like that. I just can't pick them because there's no rhyme or reason. Maybe it's game script or just how the ball sort of fell that round that he scored well. Like last year, first game, 150. Wow, amazing. Game 2, 71. Game 3, 68.
There's some 40s in there too, I think.
There's some 40s in there. There's multiple 40s in there. There's some 60s. But there's 134, 150, 121, 116, 121 again, 136. Yeah. There's some big ceiling scores, but there's no change in role.
No,
I don't know.
My take on Houston is, like, would I be surprised if he goes big this year? No, I wouldn't be surprised, but can I ride the roller coaster? I don't think I can do it to myself. Like, if you look back to our first podcast, one of my rules was I want to pick players that I enjoy watching. I just can't enjoy watching Dan Houston week to week. You love the 150, but I can't cop the 40s. It breaks my heart. So I can't get on board, but I can see there'll definitely be some people who get on board, and all the best to you.
I mean, maybe there's a little bit of upside in the kick-ins. He was third in line behind Ryan Burton and Riley Bonner last year in terms of the kick-ins for Port Adelaide. But in saying that, again, some of his biggest games, he had no kick-ins at all. So maybe there's a little bit of upside if you believe that he's going to start coming in and dominating those kick-ins, but there is a few guys in there that they maybe want the ball in their hands a little bit more. So, like Trent McKenzie, we know him as the cannon. He's a guy that when he's in the team, he's going to be taking a few of those kick-ins. Obviously, Wright Burton was their biggest guy last year. So they've got a few options there that I don't necessarily think he's going to come in and be a Shannon Hearn and just dominate that and present a lot of upside there. But I just... I don't really see it with Houston in terms of there's not enough, and it's not an obvious change, I guess, is my thing.
Yeah.
He's not a super young player. How old is he actually? Let me have
He's 26.
Yeah, 26 years old. So it's not a third year, fourth year breakout or anything like that. Coming off a career high in averages, I was expecting him to go even bigger. Just not sort of my thing. If you disagree, though, guys, if you're watching along on YouTube, I'd love to hear your thoughts and your rationale as to why you think Dan Houston is someone who could be potentially undervalued. And if you're considering for your fantasy side, let us know why, because all about that discussion. And I have seen that opinion go out there a little bit.
A few people have flagged him as an option. So all power to you, and let us know why.
Let's talk about one of our boys, one of the Richmond faithful, Nick Vlost.
This bloke.
Am I saying it right? Because I know there's been a few.
Nah, mate, I don't even know. Nick Vlost. Let's go with Nick Vlosten. He's an absolute jet, but he's not a fantasy jet. I think he showed improvement. He showed improvement over the last couple of seasons. And there's like some consistency to his score. But with Richmond, there's just too many unknowns. They've never been a great fantasy scoring team. And to be honest, I fully expect Jaden Short to go into that back line this year, and that's going to take up some of Vlosten's uncontested marks.
That's the big thing there, isn't it?
Yeah, and even if Short didn't go back, you're still not. You're still not picking Vlosten. But with Shorty back there, it's not going to be a fantasy party for Vlosten at all.
So Vlosten missed the first 4 rounds of the year last year, and in those first 4 rounds, Jaden Short went crazy. 12 kick-ins, 10 kick-ins, 5, 9 kick-ins, all for Short. And then after that, Dawson comes in, they split a little bit more, and then, of course, we know that in round 7, Jaden Short moved into the midfield, and that's where Dawson started to really dominate those kick-ins for Richmond. He started to be that more designated guy off half-back between him and Rioli. But I think, obviously, we've got Hopper coming in, we've got Taranto coming in.
Yeah,
the expectation is Short that's going to go back.
Yeah.
I would hope so. I mean, there was times where he was playing a little bit in the half-forward line, which... as not only a fantasy fan, but also a Richmond fan, I don't think that that's where he should be playing. So my hope is that he moves back into that half-back role, Short that is, and I think that definitely will hurt Vlosten. And there's just too many... In those Richmond, Geelong, Collingwood systems... There's really only enough for one guy to stand out and be a premium defender, and I think that Vlosten will play second fiddle to a player like Jaden Short. So I think he's a pretty obvious one.
I think so too. The next fella on our list is a doggy, if I'm not wrong, and I think you actually owned this bloke at some point last year.
I did. Let's maybe talk with him and Caleb Daniel. Caleb Daniel and Bailey Dale. We're talking about
Lannister.
Here. Yeah, that's right. Little helmet. There's just too many mouths to feed. Bailey Dale did really well last year when there was a couple guys out, so I think Caleb Daniel missed some time last year. I picked him up around that time. Again, similar to a Lloyd. I think it was more also a point of difference at the end of the season. I think Bailey Dale's a really good player.
Yeah.
And if there was an injury to a Caleb Daniel, to someone that we might talk about in the mid-prices, Ed Richards, or even
so let's talk about
Treloar as well.
So who? Yeah, that's I was going to say. So you've got Dale, Daniel, Treloar, Richards, and others who potentially play that kind of role across half-back. I think you're spot on with too many mouths to feed.
Too many mouths to feed.
If you look at the teams where you have a really successful, high-scoring half-backman, they're teams where there's one or two blokes doing that role at best, not 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, you've got teams like Sinclair. He was the designated guy off half-back. Dawson was the guy for Adelaide.
Yeah.
Those are the players. Sicily for Hawthorn.
Yeah.
That's what you sort of need, whereas I couldn't really confidently pick one of the Bulldogs to sort of break through. It might be up and down. He might have some good games, but then he's also going to share the load with some of those other guys. But if, for example, and again, not wishing this on anyone, but if there was an injury or something like that to a Caleb Daniel or one of those other Bulldogs players, Bailey Dale is the guy that I think has the highest ceiling of all of them. I think he's probably the best player in terms of his ability to I think he's got a great kick on him. I think he's a good decision maker. He's got a little bit more height than a Caleb Daniel, which is not hard, obviously, so he can get a bit more of those marks. I think he's the guy that I like out of all of them the most. 26 years old, right in the middle of his prime. But I think whilst they're all healthy, I don't think you could pick any of them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. What about Brando at the GC?
Brandon Ellis, Richmond alumni.
He's got defender mid status, but I don't know what changes. I've seen some people mention his name on Twitter in terms of being undervalued, but I just don't see what changes at Gold Coast for him to change his average. So I
think one of the things for Brandon Ellis is he went at 102 in his last 5. So he finished the year really strong. I, however, think that might just be small sample size, flash in the pan.
Do you have who they played in those last 5, or am I being too?
I do not. I can bring that up if you give me 2 seconds. But I think the other thing that people are also seeing is that the year before he averaged 94 points. So right there, you've got at least sort of 8 points of upside based on last year. However, I will point out the fact that the Gold Coast game plan changed dramatically last year. Yeah. The year before, they were kicking it around a lot, and defenders for the Gold Coast Suns were actually averaging a lot of points. We're talking about Jack Bowes, even Oleg Markov, another Richmond alumni. Ellis was one of those guys that benefited playing out on the wing. They were doing a lot more chip mark, whereas this year they're much more direct, and a lot of the AFL fantasy scores for the Suns dipped. Yeah. And obviously the Suns had a good year last year. Like they were as close as they ever were to making the finals, so I think they're going to continue going with that sort of game style. In
his last 5, he looking at Brando. In his
Kangaroos.
last 5, he missed a game. So Kangaroos are in there. West Coast Hawthorns in there. Actually, he missed the game against West Coast. 99 against the Hawks. A big 130 against Geelong. Imagine they would have been pants in that game. But I just don't see enough changing that you pick him over someone else.
Yeah,
is all I'm saying.
it was very similar to like a Daniel Houston. He's got some ceiling scores of 130, 126, couple of low 100s, but then he's also got a couple of 50s, 60s, and 70s in there. And without a clear role change or a clear change in game style, I just don't think that you could confidently pick him.
And to put it in context as well, you spend an extra 10, 15k and you get Dacos or Hayden Young.
Yeah,
and I think
most of us are going to do that. Yeah, and I don't think you can do both. I think he's the kind of type that people are looking at the stats. They're looking at those classic, the last 5 or average after the bye, and he ticks those boxes just from a pure statistical point of view. But you've got to go a bit deeper into terms of the role, what's changed in terms of the team, and there's not enough there for me to infer that will continue on.
Yeah. Last couple of names on the list, I really haven't heard these ones get around on Twitter at all. Luke Ryan, from what I've heard, great Supercoach player, not so much fantasy, and then he has the downside of being quite accountable on occasion too. Yep. Sometimes he'll just run around and rack them up, but there's a lot of times where the coach says to him, hey, can you lock down? And that just doesn't suit us. And then Mason Redman, not touching him with a 10-foot pole.
No, yeah. The Essendon backline is actually, they've got a few different players off there. Nick Hind, everyone's favourite guy. McGrath. Well. Yeah, so Dawson Heppel plays a little bit off there these days. So there's a few guys there that, again, similar to the Bulldogs on maybe a lesser extent. There's a bit too much ball to go around. He had a patch there, I think, where he's putting up some good stats. I think it was around the buys. So there was flashes, but I think that there's still too many mouths to feed in that Essendon backline in terms of sharing the load back there. Yeah. Luke Ryan, I think, is going to start to cede more points to players like a Hayden Young, like a Jordan Clark. Those guys are up and coming, as Luke Ryan's going to play a bit more of that third tall defensive role and maybe a little bit less of that general. So I can definitely see his price and value going down as some of those other guys go up.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. And I think he may have to play even more accountable this year with, because am I right in saying Griffin Logue was on the move this off-season as well?
Oh,
I think he went to the Kangas. I think he went to the Kangas potentially. Jeez, die quietly if you can, Mitch.
Yeah, we're talking about all these overpriced players and it's making me feel ill, so I think we might...
Well, I've got a solution for you, mate. I reckon we should talk our top, what we think in our projection, what we think will be our top 6 defenders of 2023.
That'll make me feel a lot better, I think. So I'll throw it over to you first, and we'll go through this because we've talked about all these players, obviously, but in your order,
so
1 through 6,
D1.
and we're being cutthroat here. We're not sitting on the fence or anything like that. What have you? What have you got
to be
for us?
cutthroat. So I think I'm still locking in Doc as D1. So people might be thinking, hang on a sec, you just told me not to pick Doc.
Yeah,
at the start of the season.
Yeah, you can pick him up at some point.
Yeah,
he will
exactly.
be in our teams at some point.
What we're saying is he just doesn't present value at the moment, so we wait for his price to potentially drop, and then we try and pick him up. So I'm going Doc at number 1. We're going to go tit for tat.
You give me your 6, I'll give you my 6. Let's do that.
So Mitch can copy my 6. Now, I reckon that Jordan Dawson at D2 is still going to be the second averaging defender.
So he averaged 101 points last year. Do you see him just doing that again?
Yeah, I see him doing that again. If not a tad more, but just not enough more to present value. I think he's going to be... He's come to a new club, his second year at his new club. I think he's going to be comfortable in that role. His teammates now know how he plays as well. And so I think that only benefits him. Like I said, I think I said earlier, I just don't see him dropping off a cliff in any way. I'd be shocked if he were to go down in average.
Yep.
So I've got Doc, I've got Dawson. Then I've actually got Brayshaw.
Yep, okay. Angus Brayshaw, that is, obviously.
Yeah, Brayshaw coming in at number 3. I think we mentioned on the value, the Defender Value podcast, that we see him being at least 5 points of upside. So that takes him to somewhere between kind of like 102, 103 to 105. So he and Brayshaw and Dawson on a sort of similar level for myself. Now, this is interesting because the guy that I actually want to put next is actually not listed as a defender currently. So this is where I have to ask your permission, Mitch. Can I put Shorty on this list?
Jaden Short,
because I fully anticipate that come the end of the year, he will be a top averaging defender.
I think let's limit our list to defenders that are there now.
Okay, so let me just put Shorty.
Short, a little asterisk, obviously, because we expect him to become a defender. So but obviously we can't select him as a defender right now for fantasy.
Okay, if I've been denied Shorty, I have to go back to the drawing board here. I'm going to go Tommy Stewart.
Yep.
At number 4. Then at number 5, I'm going to lock in James Sicily. And then last one is my big call, but I made it on the first pod, so I've got to put Nick Dacos in there. This would be a huge call because I'd be backing him to probably average a ton. But I'm going to put my money where my mouth is.
So it sounds like there. So if you've got Jordan Dawson going that 1-2, 103 sort of level,
I don't see huge averages from the defenders.
They're all kind of clumped in there. So if Dacos is averaging 100, and your D2 is up there with 102, 3.
Look, the guy that I can see averaging, well over 100 is maybe Short if he goes to the back line.
Yeah, he was good there.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't see a massive amount of improvement for Dawson. Brayshaw would need to show me something. Stewart can obviously go there. I don't see a heap of defenders averaging over 100. What did we have last year? How many defenders averaged over 100?
We had those 3. We had the 3 guys,
and only one
Dawson
of them was 110.
Very just.
Yeah. So Doherty was 110. Sinclair and Dawson were only just at 100. So I think it would be silly of me to suggest that we're suddenly going to have 6 defenders averaging 110. I think that would just be silly.
I think so.
But
I think so.
I mean, what's the date today? It's the 10th of January. So
very early days.
So the 6 that I've put up there, yes. Maybe they average 100. Maybe I don't know my ass from my elbow, but we'll soon find out, hey?
Yeah.
Your turn, mate. What do you got?
Over to me. It's a pretty similar list, maybe slightly different order. Now, I think for me, to differentiate from you, I do also have Sam Doherty, number 1. But bold statement. There you go.
Hot take, guys.
Hot take. 108 I have his projected average, so a little bit less than what he did at last year with 110, but I still think he should be up there as the number 1 defender. Number 2, and I think he's closer to number 1 than he is to number 3, I have Angus Brayshaw. Okay. I think that he is out there for me. Currently, number 2, I think he is in that 105 to 110 range, so close to a Doherty in terms of his 108 average that I've got projected for him, but I think that he does have the potential in the midfield there in a team where he's not going to get tagged, elite service from the ruckman. He's put up, we've seen it towards the back end of the last year with a small sample size. I think he could be pretty good. So I've got him at number 2. I have Dawson next. Again, very similar to you. I think he's going to basically do what he did last year. Maybe 1 or 2 more points extra, just being a year further into the system. He's going to have a better preseason than he did last year. So I've got him maybe going 1 or 2 points extra in a similar sort of role. Jack Sinclair is a very big wild card for me. I think he could be off this list altogether. I've got him here at number 4, so falling behind Brayshaw and behind Dawson. The new coach, the new system does worry me a little bit. So of all these players, I'm the least confident with a player like Sinclair. But at the moment, I've got him at number 4. Number 5, I think you had him at 4 here as well. I have Tom Stewart. Sort of in those high 90s, not quite cracking the ton, but sort of. So at the moment, I've got 4 players averaging 100 with Sinclair. Again, a bit of that wild card. The top 3, I'm pretty confident in getting the 100. And then last, this is the spot that I struggle with the most. Honourable mentions to Sicily, which you've got in there. Honourable mentions to a player like Isaac Cumming, Hayden Young, some of those guys coming up there. But I do,
I see what you did there, mate. Well done.
But I do have Nick Dacos in there at D6. You've talked me into it a little bit. You've talked me into it a little bit, but
mate, you're just trying to get on my hot take here, aren't you?
I'll ride those coattails a little bit. If they come off, if they don't, it's all your idea.
No, I fully expected that to be the case.
But maybe I think I have the ceiling or the bar a little bit lower. I think that D6 is probably still around that 95, 96 kind of mark. So he's very close to the Sicilies for me.
For me, it's wishful thinking to think that he averages 100. But I think if you put it out to the AFL community, we all hope the kid does well.
Oh, of course,
he's such a jet. I mean, it would be a great story if he could just go bang and be a top 6 defender in his second year.
One of the guys that we don't have in here, which we probably should have mentioned as well, is Aaron Hall, is another guy that we've left off our list. Now, he might average more than some of these players, but
over 3 games.
That's right. Yeah. So I think we've kind of unintentionally disqualified him because of his risk factor.
Yeah, but there's no doubt if he plays all the games, he's a top 6 defender, but
Yeah, so I think honourable mentions to me of this 6 would be Sicily and Aaron Hall, with some of those young guys. They're around in the mix as well, but Nico Dacos does get that number 6 spot for me.
I'd be keen to see what some of the people out there have to say in terms of their top 6. If you want to leave a comment.
Over on the YouTube comments, make sure, let us know what your top 6 defenders are. If you're really brave, put a projected average next to their name and let us know how much you want those guys to go. If you think Dacos is going over a ton, if you think that Sinclair is going to still average 100, be very interested to hear your takes, guys. So that might do it for us now here, Luke. Next podcast coming up, we're going to be talking about all of the mid prices. So all of the ones that are be talking about out there, who are our favourite mid prices going into this season. It's obviously the big topic in the preseason. They're very hot names. So stay tuned for that one. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Even if you are listening to something else on a podcast platform, go over to the YouTube channel, subscribe. It would help us a lot. And make sure if you guys do enjoy the content, give the video a big like. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts.
And Roy and Calvinator.
Roy, Calvin, let's go.
We need you.
1 out of 3. All righty, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, and happy fantasy team building. Bye.